everyone, it's Queen of Light 1111, and I am here with Sunana.
Hey everyone, great to be back.
So we are here with our episode 3 of Step Into the Light, and we are so excited to be back.
So this week's episode has a few topics. We're going to be talking about ego versus intuition and attachment versus detachment.
Yep. So I think, first of all, that this is going to be a topic that is going to be very helpful to the entire spiritual community, not just those who are twin flames or in these divine connections. I think this topic of ego and intuition is one that's going to be helpful just in life in general.
So what is ego?
Ego is how you present yourself, okay? Ego is how you're presenting what is inside of you, outside of you. Ego is a person's self-esteem or their level of self-importance. So contrast to that, right? And it's not really contrast, but I guess parallel in spirituality, because people are always trying to figure out what the heck is ego and intuition. So the contrast to ego in a spiritual form, is intuition, right? So intuition is an understanding. It's something that you immediately feel in your consciousness and you recognize, okay? So think about when you first met your twin, okay? Or when you first meet a person and you feel that instant connection, right? That's intuition. That's something that your inner being, your inner soul, your spirit is recognizing. So intuition is that same kind of instant inner energy, that energy that is, when it comes in, it is calm. It's an energy of feeling settled. It's no words. It's energetic. And if, again, you contrast that to ego is loud. Ego has words. Ego is this kind of quick moving energy that is unsettling, okay? And where intuition is more calm. It's this energy of, when you have this inner knowing, if your ego mind starts to get involved and starts saying, well, no, like, what are you feeling? Are you sure you're feeling that? Like, your ego mind starts to affect your intuition, right? And so then your intuition, it won't get jarred. It won't let ego shake it, okay? Which is interesting. So when your mind starts playing these games and starts saying, well, are you sure that's your twin? Are you sure that's what you're feeling? Are you sure you're not overthinking this or overfeeling it? Your intuition will remain in the same place of consistency after you go through that flurry of emotions. Does that make sense as the difference?
Yeah, that makes sense. So the word ego typically has a negative connotation. Is ego really bad?
No, it's not bad. So, bad. Okay, let's talk about what bad and good and bad. All human terms, right? Those are all perceptions. And energy, you can't say energy is good or bad. And it is what it is. Things are what they are. It is how we incorporate those types of energies into our psyche, into our world, into our lives, into our situation. So is ego good or bad? Ego is neither. Ego can be transmuted or presented in a way that someone would perceive it to be bad. Mm-hmm. And so what does bad ego look like, right? What is ego in that form, that shadow form? Ego in the shadow form is someone who is boastful, arrogant, I'm better, I'm smarter, right? Superior,
right.
You would say. That would be the shadow of the ego. The light of the ego would be, I'm confident, I'm determined, I have the will, right? So you see the difference between how that's presented?
Yeah. So really, ego is a matter of arrogance versus confidence. So for example, if I were going to a job interview, and I walked in thinking, I'm going to be better than everyone else, that would be arrogance, versus if I just told myself, I'm going to go in being the best version of myself, that would be confidence, and that would be the lighter side of ego.
Yeah. So you said best version. Yes, be the best version.
I'm going to be the best, Sunana.
Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah, absolutely. it's a really good example. It's a really good example. Like, that's the difference between I have respect for everyone and their skill set, but you have the confidence within yourself. So it's a really good example. Yeah. And that's exactly it in one aspect.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think you gave a lot of useful insight that is really going to help our listeners.
Yeah. I mean, simply, right? I mean, we can teach a class on this for hours, but I wanted to share it in a way that it's applicable, it's practical, and you can quickly understand in layman's terms what is my ego and when my ego is talking to me versus when my spirit and my intuition and my guides may be directing me.
How would someone practice intuition?
Yeah. So again, there's the whole point. We want to make sure that we explain this in a way that you can understand it quickly. But what's very important for our podcast and for our mission is how you can apply this knowledge now into your life. So there is a website, Jack Canfield. I mean, I've looked at some of his stuff, and he's got a really good list of examples of how to practice your intuition. And he breaks it down into 7 different steps, okay? So I'm going to share those with you today. So the first thing to do is recognize when your intuition speaks. So we just talked about that, right? We talked about recognize when your intuition is speaking to you. So when your intuition is speaking to you, your intuition is a constant energy, an inner knowingness. It is calm. It is stable. It is not loud. It is not fluttering all over the place. It's not going to discredit you. Another thing about ego is that ego will inflate and deflate. And that's, you used that example earlier, arrogance and, like arrogance versus the confidence. So an ego will be like, oh, he's totally in love with me. Yeah. Right? Or ego could also be like, oh, he doesn't love me at all. Right? Mm-hmm. Intuition will be, I have this inner knowingness that he has a deep connection and a deep feeling to me. That is stable. That is you just know it. You just know it, right? It's innate within you. So recognize when your mind is inflating you or deflating you. Recognize when your mind is coming in loud and proud, okay? Right. So that's the first thing in practicing intuition. There's 7 steps. So the first step is recognize when your intuition is speaking. The second, you have to deepen through meditation. Because in this world, there's so much immediate gratification, right? Immediate satisfaction, instant message, instant text, like phone call. Everybody can be, reached instantly, immediately, right? You can order food and have it delivered. I mean, there's everything is so instant, right? So we have to learn to quiet our minds because our minds really don't get that exercise. We get exercised in immediate gratification and stimulation, but we don't really get the exercise of how to calm the mind, right? Because with any exercise, there's activity, but then there's rest, right?
Right.
So rest and rejuvenation and retreat. And so you have to, as this second step, is deepen your energy and this practice of intuition by meditation. Meditation should be for those of you who are totally cerebral, that are always overthinking, right? Meditation, I would recommend, should be guided. Because if you're going to just sit there and listen to music and try to meditate, your mind is going to take over. Right? Yeah. So you keep nodding because you're are you recognizing?
No, I love guided meditations.
Right?
I find it really hard to calm down my mind.
Right.
And I find that when I'm in a grounded state, my intuition is heightened. Mm-hmm. Intuition reaches you when you're in a calm, peaceful state of mind versus when you're in a frantic state of mind, you're overthinking, that's your ego.
Exactly. So guided meditation is perfect for someone like you or any listener out there that just has a really hard time calming themselves. So that's great. I'm glad it works for you. So the third thing is while you're meditating, okay, this is literally the third point, which is seems a little redundant, but now it's about quieting the mind. So you have to quiet the mind. So you deepen in meditation, you get grounded, you get into this energy to be guided, but sometimes you can't quiet your mind. Exactly. So it's kind of step 2 and 3 for me are they have to be separate because once you start to meditate, you must work at quietness, being mindful, peaceful, and quieting the mind to listen to intuition. You don't want to listen to your ego. The fourth thing, and I think this was really interesting as practicing your intuition, it's really about asking questions. So do you do that? Like when you're getting like intuitive hits? So you ask your intuition questions?
Always.
That's good. That's really good. So not a lot of people do that, see? I think they'll just get the message, and then the question they'll ask is, am I really listening? Is this really intuition? That's like what they do. Instead of asking their intuition, right? They should be asking their intuition. Like to kind of reset the energy. So when you're using your intuition, when your mind is quieted, when you recognize that this is intuition, be very specific with your own intuitive self about the message that you want, right? So this is also the law of attraction. You're not going to say, I want to manifest abundance. Okay, well, the universe is going to be like, okay, well, what does that mean to you? Does that mean like I want to be abundant in health and wealth, or like do I want to be abundant in whatever, like many cars, abundant in love? Like what's the abundance? Be specific in what you want to attract. So the same thing about your intuition. Be specific about what you want your intuition to tell you. Be very clear, because the more specific you are in asking your questions, the more specific the answers will be. Okay? I think that's a really good point. Then the next thing, okay, write it down. Because he says here, and I totally believe it, because your intuition is subtle, it's not overpowering, it's not like your ego, your messages are subtle. Have you noticed that when you get your intuitive message, right?
Yeah.
It's like, I notice it within me too. So even like when I'm reading tarot or I'm channeling a message, it's not loud.
Your message could be the most simple thing ever.
Right, exactly. And then but you have to listen to it.
Exactly.
Because what he says is, and it makes sense, that intuitive message goes away in like 37 seconds. If you don't listen to it right away, it's like gonna go, because it's subtle, it can fade. I mean, listen, 37 seconds worries me, because it takes me 37 seconds to find a pen.
I know.
So I think that, wherever you find that you connect most to your intuition, and sometimes it's for people right before bed, right when they wake up, because they're more in a peaceful state, like keep a pen and paper in that area. Or in this world of like, we're always connected, like if your phone's next to you, go to your notes page and write it down. Because that's very important. When that intuition comes to you, when that message comes, you've got to write it down right away, because the memory, you're going to get into the next thing and you're going to forget what the message was, okay? Totally. Number six. So we've got ask the questions. We've got write it down. Now we have action. How much do you trust your intuition? You got to take action on it, right? So when Spirit is saying to you, Sunena, quiet your mind, because I want to say something, and they're going to make your ears ring until you listen to the message, right? Yep. You've got to listen to that. And when the message comes and they say, do a really good job on the podcast with Queen of Light. Just kidding.
Yep.
But,
they did tell me that.
They did, okay. Then that's the action you want to take, right? Seventh, most important, trust your intuition. That's trusting yourself. Okay, trust the guidance, because that guidance is coming from within you, who has all of the answers. Why? Because you are connected to Source. You are connected to Spirit. Okay, so I'm going to recap this for those of you in the back. Okay, practicing intuition. 1, recognize your intuition when it speaks. 2, deepen it through meditation. For those of you overthinkers, use a guided one. 3, quiet your mind so that you can listen to your intuition, and that happens through that meditation that I'm talking about. 4, be very, very clear about the questions so that your answers can be very specific and clear as well. 5, keep a pen, because those messages come quick. Write it down. 6, take that action. And 7, trust yourself. Trust the intuition.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
That is awesome advice for someone who would want to grow their intuition.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think this is going to be really helpful. So give us your feedback and let us know what you guys thought about that and how it's helped you. We really want to know how this part of the segment has helped. So please give us the feedback through the comment section when we post this podcast on YouTube.
Yeah, so now that we've learned a lot about what ego is versus intuition and how to grow your intuition, let's get into another topic that a lot of our audience has been asking about. So let's get into what is attachment versus detachment.
Yeah. So that is like the story of the twin flame journey and the story of life in general. It should be. Okay, it really should be. So shall I just define what attachment and detachment is first?
In comparison to each other.
Okay, so I'll do that. So that way you have the contrast. So attachment, oh my gosh. So again, not good or bad, it's just how you do this, how you exercise these energies, okay? Attachment. Attachment is wanting, desiring, yearning, okay? There's nothing wrong with those things. But when you become attached, so here's the thing. When you want the job, when you desire the job, like those types of things, that fuels that energy of the light of the ego. Remember, we just talked about that. It fuels that confidence that, you know what, I want this, I have my eye on the prize, and I'm going to try my best to get this, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of attachment, when you use it well, that wanting, that desire, where it fuels your ambition, I think that's really good. But when you're in this wanting and desiring, and it's outside of you, and you're going to be emotionally affected if you don't get the job, that attachment is very difficult because it becomes a binding energy. Binding. You don't want to be bound. That's the devil's energy, okay? So in the tarot card, the devil's energy is all about being bound. It's about being restricted. It's about being in this 3D energy of immediate gratification. I need to feel it. I need to have it. I need to own it. I need to possess it. I need to want it. And so that attachment can be very difficult on your emotions, on your psyche, on your mindset. So that shadow of the attachment is not good. So do you see the contrast of how it is, there's some attachment energy that's okay because it fuels your desire to do great things, right?
Exactly.
But when you use the attachment in the shadow, it can actually disable you in the sense that you're so upset, or you're so affected, you're so shaken because that thing outside of you didn't manifest because you were so attached to it.
Yeah.
Okay? So in contrast to that, detachment is about being objective. It's about being aloof. It's about being physically present, but not absorbing all of the energy. Okay? It could be this energy of, like I'm in a connection and I am, experiencing everything, but I'm not necessarily attached to, to what's happening in the future or in the past. I'm just experiencing what is happening in front of me now.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's shadow to that and there is light to that. Okay. So just to be fair, since I did that for attachment, detachment, when it's in the shadow, you can be aloof, and people can see you as someone who's aloof and uncaring and not invested, okay? But then when you're in the detached energy where you're like, I am here, I'm present, I'm engaged. But if you're gonna have a bad day, I'm not gonna sit here and absorb the whole thing and affect my whole life. I'm gonna be there, I'm gonna empathize, I'm going to sympathize however way you're gonna do it, but I'm not gonna absorb all of these energies because I'm just gonna help you through it as best as I can by staying detached, because someone needs to be. If someone's going through some major trauma, right? Like the person that's there in this detached energy is going to be very helpful to help pull somebody out of that or assist someone out of that. So detachment energy, when you're aloof and uninvested and just kind of like up in the sky and just don't care about anything else, that's the shadow of it. But I think that the light of this detachment has everything to do with being present, being loving, being helpful, but not being that binding energy that attachment can bring.
So I think attachment and detachment are both really human things. Attachment a lot of times is when someone feels like they're needing something or someone that they don't actually need. And when they don't have that person or thing, they feel kind of empty within themselves. Versus detachment, where detachment doesn't necessarily mean that you don't love that person or thing, or you don't care for that person or thing. It means you can appreciate them without needing them and without feeling empty without them.
Right, right. The other thing to note, though, too, and I think that's a great recap, is trauma, right? When people have trauma through a past experience or through, you know, anything. It could be a breakup. It could be something health related. It could be any kind of trauma that has happened. People get attached to that energy, right? Like, oh my God, he broke up with me 10 years ago and I'm still holding on to that pain, right? Like, that's a trauma bond. That's a trauma attachment. Yeah. Then you're attaching that trauma to that person, and then you're retelling the story, and then you're constantly in that trauma because you haven't practiced detaching from it. And that detachment brings a lesson. The detachment, well, if you go back from a detached state of mind, a detached emotional state, then you can learn a lesson and say, okay, what did I learn from that trauma? What did I learn from that experience? What did he teach me? What did she teach me as part of that experience? You don't need to have a trauma bond with someone. You don't. Exactly. You can have it as part of your learning and an awakening, but you don't want to be retelling that story 10 years down the line, because the goal is to move through it and heal it and take the experience and the learning and break free from that. That is why detachment is so important.
Right. And I know we've experienced this throughout our relationship.
We totally have. I mean, I don't think, not the trauma piece.
No.
We haven't, thank God. But we have absolutely. So for those of you who don't know, Sunaina is my niece. Sunaina, I have one brother. My brother has 3 children. Sunaina is the oldest of the 3. And Sunaina and I know this because I'm spiritual and I have these gifts and understand energy. Sunaina and I have a very, very deep soul connection. We have had many lives together where, you know, we've also been mother and daughter. And so in this lifetime, she is born in the form of my niece, right? Which I'm so grateful for. So I'm going to let you talk a little bit, Sunaina, about your experience of our journey through attachment and detachment.
Yeah, so when I was younger, I would spend a lot of time with my aunt. I would stay with her for weeks at a time. And whenever the time came where we had to say goodbye to each other, we would find it really hard. Especially me, I would be crying and crying and I wouldn't want to go home. But then as I grew up, I experienced life in different ways. I started going to college. I started making new friends. I started going out and whatnot. And I didn't really experience that attachment to my aunt anymore. I mean, I still love her, of course, but I didn't feel that energy of needing her. Yeah. And I didn't really feel empty without her. Right. So that was me kind of switching to attachment.
To detachment.
To detachment.
To healthy detachment. Not the shadow part. Because the way that you did that, in contrast for me, right? So the attachment energy that you had to me, I was just as attached to you. You were a child. I mean, like, I've known you since you were born, you know, and like when you used to be sick, you'd want to be with me. And we both had this attachment. And when you would leave, I felt the same. I also felt very attached. I would also feel hurt and like I was losing a part of me, right? But this was also my lesson to learn, like for you. So it was interesting because as you started to detach and experience your life as you should, and you were detaching, I still felt the love. I still felt the energetic connection. But that detachment, like, you can feel the energy shift. You can feel the energy shift from whereas, like, I would used to hear from you all the time. You'd always want to spend time with me. To all of a sudden now you're like, I'm going out with my girlfriends. And I'm like, okay. So when you would want to go out with your friends and we weren't spending the weekends together, I was kind of like, okay, like I was happy for you to go out and experience and have fun and be with your girlfriends because I had all that too, right? And I want you to experience it. But then I was also kind of like, well, shit, what am I going to do, right? Because I didn't balance myself well in our connection. I mean, I am the most independent, like, there's not a codependent bone in me. You know that about me, right? Like, I'm as independent as they get, probably to a fault at times. But with you, it was just very different. And I also think that you were a huge part of my heart awakening too, because I became a very, very heart-centered when you were born. And so by you coming into my life, that energy and that love and that recognition I had of you, that created that attachment, right?
Yeah.
But then as you started to grow and you were detaching, I found myself attaching a little bit more, right? Because I wasn't used to the energetic shift.
Right.
So I had to work on my detachment and start to not fill the void with something else.
Exactly.
No, that's the key.
Mm-hmm.
That's the key, right? You're all, mm-hmm. So the thing, you're right, but that's it, right? That's an aha moment. You don't fill the void with something.
You don't have a void.
Exactly. You don't have a void.
That's what it is. That's
right.
what it's all about.
So when you started detaching, I was like, hold on. And I guess the good thing about where I was in that state when you started doing that was I was very much in my awakening and understanding. And as you started to detach, I was like, no, this is creating room for something in my life for myself. And
right.
so I really went within and started to create my mission. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it just became so beautiful in that it was for me to serve myself and for what I was doing and what I wanted to do for the world. So anyway, this detachment was really it taught me a lot. It was very helpful for me from a heart space, and then from also my own spiritual growth and understanding. I mean, how did you do the detachment part on your end? Did you feel like when you were detaching, it was easy for you because you were just growing and experiencing new things?
Well,
or how did you transition?
I kind of realized that now that I'm at this state of healthy detachment in our relationship, I know in the back of my mind that you're always there for me no matter what. Even
right.
if I'm not with you, I still know that I love you, you love me.
Yeah.
So I'm not in that state of like neediness with you anymore.
Right.
It's
Same
not
here.
about that.
Same. And it's so healthy, right? I mean, I don't like going weeks without talking to you.
Yeah.
But and I don't think we've ever gone more than that. But we used to have that where we were talking all the time. But now, if I don't talk to you for a few days, I'm okay. It isn't. I mean, I know we're connected. I know if something. First of all, because we're so connected, you feel if something's up with me, and I can feel when something's up with you.
You're always there.
Right. We're so connected that way. So I just love this place where we're at, where it's healthy, but we know we're always there. We're
right.
always connected. And frankly, that's also what this journey of life is, this journey of the twin flame is that we talk about, right? The journey of being a twin and a twin flame teaches you a lot. So I thank you too as my teacher,
thank
to
you.
help me.
You've taught me so much.
Right? And you've taught me, and it just really helped me, detach when I needed to for my own connection, right? In preparation for my own sacred union, that it helped in saying, hey, you know what? We're always connected. We're always one.
Exactly.
And being in a place of union of yourself. Like, look at you at the age that you're at, and you're very whole. You're very connected. You're in union with yourself. Granted, you've got some things to learn
of
still,
course.
But I am here to help you with that, right? But you're not always going to need me, because if you listen to your intuition,
yep.
like we talked about earlier, all the answers are within you. They're not within your aunt. They're not within the books. It's all within you.
Exactly.
So this has been a really, really good experience for both of us. So I think what's going to be helpful for people next, if you agree, since we did it for intuition, we should probably talk about how to practice detachment, right?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. So how does one practice attachment?
Yeah. I wanted to make this, kind of like that 1 through 7 that we had for intuition, how to practice intuition. So I've broken it down here in a few steps, okay? 4 steps. And if you Google this, a lot of this information is also on the internet, but, I broke it down here in some simple stuff. So the first thing around practicing detachment is from detaching anything material, okay? I need this shirt. I need this sweater. I need money. I need that car. I need this possession. Those are all very 3D things. And so when you detach from the material thing to make you happy, that is the step one in knowing that your happiness, that your wholeness does not come from a car. Your wholeness and your oneness does not come from the labels that you wear. The wholeness and the oneness, that those things aren't going to make you happy and keep you satisfied. It may for a moment, it may for a month, it may for a year, but it's going to eventually lose its luster. So start practicing detachment from the material thing. I'm not saying, again, we talked about attachment, healthy attachment and shadow attachment. I'm not saying don't desire to have great things, but don't let that be your source of happiness.
Exactly.
Okay? Second, number 2, you've got to detach from relationships. As Sunaina and I just talked about. You've got to be in this place, not where you're aloof and uncaring, okay? Because that's frankly what will happen, right? So, you know, like Sunaina, when you talked about you were going with your friends and stuff, and while I was happy for you, there was a part of me that was kind of like, oh,
what about me?
What about me? She doesn't care about me anymore. Like, did you forget your aunt? Remember I used to say that to you, Sunaina, is this the year you're going to forget about me?
And I always used to say, that's ridiculous.
I know.
I'm never going to forget about
I know. It's so annoying. But anyway. So, detaching from relationships. Just because someone is doing something different, expanding their horizons, really fulfilling their own lives, doesn't mean that connection is over, okay? It doesn't mean that you're losing them. You have to give people space. You cannot crowd them and bind them and bound them to you. They will never grow. They will never learn. You know, there's that saying, right? If you love something, set it free. And if it comes back to you, oh, it's always meant to be. I know it's cliche and I know whatever, but I'm saying that as cliche as it is, when I let anything go, right? That could be your masculine. That could be my soulmate in Sunaina. They come back when it is meant to be. And they feel, and that's the other thing for me specifically, and I think that a lot of people need to learn, love needs to feel free. You don't ever want people to experience your love as a prison. You never want to experience that. Your love should be free and empowering and make people feel safe and at home. They should want to be in that energy. They shouldn't feel like they are manipulated emotionally or they feel obligated to be in that relationship. So your love, in the way that you have a detached love, it should be freeing. Okay? Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So the third thing is about detaching from experiences. Remember I talked about that earlier when I said, you know, there's people that have this trauma that they've experienced years ago. And no disrespect to anybody's trauma, because trauma is difficult, it is painful, it is hurtful, and it is frankly something that, depending on what you've gone through, takes a long time to get over. But why does it take a long time? Because that becomes someone's story. It becomes who they are. So detach from your experiences, from your past, from that trauma, from that pain, okay? It's hard. But what you do with that when you detach is you take the experience. You take the lesson. You learn from that shadow and you transmute it into that light to become that healthier version of you. That's no longer your story. You're no longer my pain. You are my experience, and now I'm better because of it, okay? And then the last thing is, and this was important for me to learn as a human, right, as a 3D person, is detach from your job, from your 3D job. I'm not telling anybody to quit. I'm not telling anybody to rethink their career. But if you think that you are the sum of your title, your career, any of those things, you're not. You're not. And this was my biggest lesson in my journey is I didn't know how to identify myself when I was no longer the chief operating officer of a company. I was like, who am I? Like, I remember asking my question because that's who I was for almost 30 years,
and
right?
You didn't know how to separate yourself from that title.
I didn't. I became my job. I was attached to my job, right? And so when I detached from that title, from that job, from that environment, I learned who I am. I know who I am. So now I know who I am without my job. I know who I am without a relationship. I know who I am without this work even that I'm doing as Queen of Light, 1111. I know who I am at the core, right? And who am I at the core? I'm the light. I'm my own light. I'm my own source of happiness, right?
Right.
I am my own world in a way that I can help create a world for those that I touch, that I'm in a connection with, and help impact their world for the better, because I'm not binding them with my love, with my light. It's not overpowering and it's not overshadowing them. Right. So that's how you know who you are.
And isn't that what union of self is all about?
Totally what union
You should
self.
be able to identify who you are as a person, separate from anything or anyone else.
Exactly.
And that is when you truly achieve union of self.
Exactly. Exactly. Amen.
Amen.
So we are going to leave it at that. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Step Into the Light with Queen of Light 1111 and Sunena.
Thank you so much for tuning in, everyone. We had so much fun with this week's episode.
Have a great day, everybody. Bye.